Welcome to the Escape into Board Games podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And this is our escape from the real world where we talk about board games. In this episode, we contemplate deduction games.
So please join us for the Escape into Board Games podcast. When we talk about deduction games, most of us are familiar with Clue and Mastermind.
Clue, or Cluedo, has been around since 1949. Published in the UK by Anthony E. Pratt, Clue is the classic murder mystery game the whole family can enjoy.
Designed by Mordecai Mirowitz in 1971, Mastermind is the code-breaking game for two players that challenges players to use logic to deduce which pegs the opponent has hidden.
Sometimes cooperative, deduction games are unique in that players are competing against the game. Many have players racing others to beat the puzzle first.
We are seeing some recent evolution in the deduction game. Apps on our phone are taking the place of players as the dungeon master or mastermind. This makes it fun for everyone so that all the players can play at the same time.
Complicated computer algorithms are being used to generate thousands of different unique puzzles from the same set of board game components. This is not something we've seen before and wasn't possible until recently when technology has made it available.
Deduction games used to be a category of game. You would sit down and play a deduction game.
But now we are seeing deduction being treated more like a mechanism within a game, a single element in a larger game with other systems and other mechanisms supporting it.
In this episode, we contemplate deduction games.
I have to admit that deduction is not my favorite category of games.
I know.
I like them, but you like them a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, that's okay.
This is my show.
This is your show, yeah. No, you lead us here. Just like when we play, I expect you to lead us in the deduction game as it goes. And I expect you to always win, too. And I have to be honest here. I don't understand the difference between the varieties of deduction games that are out there. Like I sort of understand what a social deduction game is, but I don't know what the difference is in the terms between like a deduction game and what is induction reasoning and how that's different than deduction in general.
Yeah. They're very similar. We're splitting hairs between deduction and induction.
Sure.
Truly. But yeah, I can understand there's some confusion.
I've had them explained to me several times, but for some reason I hear it, I understand it, and then it's gone from my head and I don't understand it again.
Deduction reasoning is when you eliminate all other possibilities to find the solution. Inductive reasoning involves drawing a conclusion from a set of specific observations or a body of data.
Purrrlock Holmes, Furriarty's Trail. Purrrlock Holmes, Furriarty's Trail is a semi-cooperative memory and pattern recognition deduction game for 2 to 5 players set in a feline Sherlock Holmes world. Published by Deduction Games in 2017 and designed by Stephen Sauer, Purrrlock Holmes is recommended for ages 10 and up and can be played in about 30 minutes. Thematically, this is the world of Sherlock Holmes, if everyone were cats. The evil Furriarty is terrorizing London, and it's up to Purrrlock Holmes to stop him before he completes his plans and escapes. Players are inspectors at Scotland Pound, working together to bust up members of Furriarty's gang and help Purrrlock get closer to the bewhispered baddie. It's really hard to read that when you're giggling in my ear. You can hear the laughter in my voice.
It's really funny.
It is really funny. Players are dealt a card that they are not allowed to look at. This represents your personal investigation. That card is displayed facing out so that all other players at the table can see it. You will have to use deductive reasoning to guess details about the card in front of you. Each clue card has 2 details: a suspect, one of 5 different types of animals, a dog, a frog, a crow, a goose, or a rat, and an hour, which is a number from 1 to 12. There are only one of each animal and each number in the game, so there is only one card that has a goose with the number 5 on it. Players are trying to guess one or both of these details, either the animal or the number, or both, to gather point tokens and get the group closer to catching Furriarty. On your turn, you play 2 cards from your hand, and the other players will tell you if they are good clues or leads, or bad clues called dead ends. Players place these cards face up in front of them on either side of their player board to help them remember which clues were helpful and which were not. A card is a good lead if it matches your face-out investigation card with either the same suspect, the same hour of the crime, or an adjacent hour of your investigation card. All cards that don't match the animal, the hour, and do not have an adjacent hour are considered a dead-end clue.
So in your tableau in front of you, you've got this card that's perched up in a little stand. You can just see the back of it. So on the left side, you've got the good clues, and on the right side, you've got the bad clues.
Correct.
And each turn, you're adding more and more cards.
So if I played a goose with a 5 on it, and it was considered a good card, then I know that the card in front of me that's facing out was either a card with a 5 on it, or a card with a 4 or a 6 on it, or a goose.
Yeah.
I have to use the logic of the information that I got. I can use other cards' clues that I've gotten on other turns and look at clue cards in front of other players to figure out which card is mine.
Because there's only one copy of the 5 goose.
Yep.
And so if the 5 goose is one of your possibilities, but you look across the table and see it in front of your teammate, well, you know that it's not the 5 goose because there it is right there.
Right. So now I've got more information. It's either the 4 or the 6 of goose, or it's just a goose that is correct. And you have to look at the other cards that you've been given clues on to figure it out.
I love this game.
It's a great game. Guessing both the suspect of the crime and the hour of the crime correctly will get you closer to catching Furriarty. But it's not a bad strategy to guess just one of those details.
So you get a certain number of points if you go, oh, I'm a goose. And you're right. But if you say, oh, I'm the goose at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, then you get more points. But that could take like another round or maybe even 2 more rounds before you've gathered enough information to make that kind of a detailed guess.
Exactly.
So yeah, sometimes it's easier to just go goose.
And all this time, Furriarty is moving along this trail towards the end and his eventual escape. If he gets there before someone catches him, the game is over and everyone loses.
Yeah.
In this game, when everyone loses, the player with the fewest points is awarded the litter box inspector.
Yeah. It's the shame badge.
And it is a cooperative game. We're all working together to win, but there's points. And if you have the most points when everyone wins, you are awarded the rank of Chief Inspector of Scotland Pound.
Yeah. Love the puns.
I think this would make a great movie.
Yeah.
Or something that you might see on like the Cartoon Network or something. I would totally watch.
Oh, for sure.
Purrrlock Holmes, The Adventures of Purrrlock Holmes. I would be all over that. It doesn't matter who wrote it or drew it. I'd be watching that. The art is fantastic in this game. The animals are drawn by Jackie Davis.
Okay.
And just amazing. Just absolutely amazing artwork. This is by far my number 1 favorite all-time deduction game.
Nice.
I absolutely love this game. It's gorgeous. It's a bit of a challenge to explain to some players that aren't familiar with the idea of, a deduction puzzle and sort of eliminating all the possibilities.
Yeah.
But once you get the idea of how this game works, it really is quite simple.
It clicks, yeah.
Yeah. You can almost see it in like the middle third of the game where a new player goes, oh, yeah. And their eyes kind of light up like, oh, this is brilliant. I love this. It works really well.
It was so unique for me to play a cooperative deduction game.
Yeah.
I've been so used to the clues and the masterminds and then to work together. It was that was really something.
And it works really well with that theme, right? We're all part of Scotland Pound and we're all working together. But, just like the real Scotland Pound, there's always going to be one kitty that's better than the rest. I got to admit, some deduction games, like social deduction games and those escape room type games, often they make me feel kind of stupid. I don't know how else to say it.
Sure.
They make me feel like I can't figure this out and I don't know why. I like puzzles. I like cryptography. I like all that.
Yeah.
But sometimes those kinds of games just make me feel slow, I guess. But Purrrlock doesn't do that at all. It's a very clever game that stretches your mind just a little bit, but does it in a fun way that doesn't ever make it feel like it's hard work or make you feel dumb or anything like that. It is the perfect game to introduce to new players who like puzzles and deduction games like Clue.
Yeah. We had tremendous success introducing this to our kids who were quite young at the time when we first played it. And our youngest would use little Lego pieces, 1x1s, the little tiny 1x1s.
Yeah.
And just use that to mark off on her little player board which possibilities had been eliminated, because you do need a significant amount of working memory to hold in your head all the things that your card could or couldn't be before you're able to take a guess. But the little cheat for the younger kids is to take these little Lego pieces and just cover up the hours that don't apply and help them narrow it down.
That's awesome. That's a great tip, actually. That's really good for younger players. I'll often say, cover it up with your finger if you're having trouble remembering and look at what's left. But that works really well for younger players.
We just threw a bunch of little Lego pieces in the box.
I want to point out that Stephen Sauer, the designer of Purrrlock Holmes, is a Toronto area game designer. He is a wonderful human being. I'm a big fan of Stephen's.
Yeah.
He also owns a fantastical gem of a store with some amazing gifts. They carry uncommon Harry Potter collectibles, some books and some games, generally hard to find oddities and curiosities. The store is called Curiosa, and it's located in the heart of Little Italy in Toronto, just minutes from Snakes and Lattes. And it's a real treat to visit. You can easily spend an hour in there just browsing.
Absolutely. I love it in there. It's really quite magical what they've got going on there. It's not all Harry Potter, but
no,
you definitely get that feel of you've stepped into Hogwarts or
Wizard's Room or something like that.
Ollivanders. He makes wands, Chris.
Oh, there we go.
Jeez, you idiot. You peasant. Damn.
I tried to pretend
this
like I
podcast
knew
is over. I'm hanging up. Cryptid. Cryptid is a modular board, pattern recognition, abstracted monster hunting deduction game for 2 to 5 players ages 10 and up. It plays in about 30 to 50 minutes and was designed by Hal Duncan and Ruth Vevers, with some art by Kwanchai Moria, published by Osprey Games in 2018. In Cryptid, players are cryptozoologists, hunting for the elusive cryptid that lives somewhere on the board. Each player has one crucial piece of information about where the cryptid lives. If we combined all the players' information, it would point to a single hex out of over 100 on the board as the cryptid's hiding place. But we're not working together. Each one of us wants the glory of finding the cryptid for ourselves, so we will quiz and inquire and question our opponents as to where the cryptid might be, according to their rule, and slowly eliminate all possibilities until you're left with the cryptid's hiding place. When you set up a game of Cryptid, you take a card from the setup deck that has the orientation of the modular tiles, the location of the 8 buildings, 2 different buildings in 4 different colors, and the rule code that will direct each player to the different rule in their personal rulebook. Once it's all set up, you have a landscape in front of you made up of forests, swamp, mountain, desert, and lake regions. Some sections will be outlined as bear territories or cougar territories, and the 6 to 8 different buildings, depending on your difficulty level, the standing stones and abandoned shacks, in green, blue, white, and black. Players are given a supply of cubes and discs in their player color, and they're each given a rule, which they look up in their rulebook. The rules that each player is given could be: the cryptid is in one of two types of terrain.
On a forest or a desert.
Or the rule could be:
on a desert or water.
Another example of the rule could be within one space of a terrain type or animal territory. This might look like
within one space of a forest.
Or the rule could be
within one space of a cougar territory.
Another example of the rule could be within two spaces of any animal territory or a type of structure. So like
within two spaces of a standing stone.
Or the rule could be
within two spaces of a bear territory.
And the final rule could be within three spaces of a color of structure. Like
within three spaces of a blue structure.
Or the rule could be
within three spaces of a green structure.
So let's say that in a 3-player game, you could take 3 of these rules and combine them, and they would point to one hex on the board. There's only one hex on the board where this is true for all 3 players. So on a player's turn, they point to a single hex on the board and they ask another player at the table, according to your rule, can the cryptid live in this habitat? If the answer is yes, the player puts a disc on that location, and if the answer is no, the player puts down a cube. If the player puts down a cube, then you have to put down a cube in a hex somewhere on the board which doesn't follow your rule.
So that's giving more information to the other players.
Exactly. You have to be really careful when you're giving away that information about how much information you're giving away when you put those cubes down, because it could be quite telling.
Yeah.
I really like this mechanism because it leaves the answers on the board for all the players to see. Like everything that anyone's ever asked it stays on the board.
Yeah, it's always there.
These type of deduction games are difficult because you need a tremendous amount of working memory. So the cubes on the board help.
That's why I never win. That explains it.
That explains it. Each player's discs and cubes are in their player color, so it's easy to keep track of whose is whose. Once a player has gathered enough information to make a guess as to where the cryptid might be hiding, they place a disc of their own color on the board, and they ask the player to the left, can the cryptid live in this habitat according to their rule? If yes, the disc goes down into the hex. It goes around the table like this until a player says no and adds a cube. If no player adds a cube, then the rule is correct for everyone. Then there's a stack of discs in each player color revealing the true location of the cryptid, and the player who has made the guess is declared the winner.
There's a number of hexes in every game, and there's only one single location.
Yeah.
Out of all of these locations.
108. There's 108 different hexes on the board.
And only one of them can be correct.
It's so amazing how they've done the math.
Yeah.
The algorithm somehow. And I know it's a trade secret from the designers of how they've done this, but it's amazing how the each setup they've done this.
It really is amazing. It's exciting to watch it unfold because for me, it's a mathematical marvel because I have no idea how they did it. But also, from a game point of view, it's very exciting. Like, it just builds and builds and builds, and you feel like you're getting closer, and then you're like, no, that's the wrong information. And you can see your opponent's getting closer, and you're trying to use what information you think they have or why they're choosing what they're choosing, and use that to your goal. It's just a great game.
This is a good example of the induction reasoning where we're slowly eliminating all the rules that you could be. And when I see Chris placing cubes down on the ocean and on the desert and next to the swamp, well, then I'm eliminating certain rules about deserts and swamps and oceans. And then maybe I can, my next guess could be that more educated and that more narrowed down until I can finally figure out what could Chris's rule be. And then once I figure out what Chris's rule is, then I have to figure out what AJ's rule is. And then I know what my rule is.
Yep.
I've known since the beginning. So I've kind of got it narrowed down.
Yeah.
It's just such a tremendous puzzle. I just love the way it makes my brain burn.
Yeah.
I like how the game isn't this exciting finish. It's not an accumulation of points and it's not tallied up at the end. You make the guess. It goes around the table. Everybody says yes. Boom. Winner. Done. It's over.
Yeah, it's over.
That's just so satisfying.
It really is. One at a time, people are putting down their answers that either yes, it is, or no, it's not. And one no means keep playing. And if everyone says yes, done. It's over. Yay. Congrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a word of warning, they even put this in the rule book. The game is pretty fragile. It can be easily broken if there's a player at the table that misunderstands a rule or if they lie.
Yes.
It can be a bit disheartening if we're all sitting around the table for almost an hour and then we realize that somebody's not playing properly.
Yeah. That's happened to us, I think only once or twice, where someone got a rule wrong. Hopefully, if someone lies during a game like this, you want to find out so that you don't play with them ever again. But I mean, making a mistake, this is a game where it can be pretty easy to make a mistake and get something wrong, especially if it's the first time you're playing a game like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think once everyone's got their head around how it works, it works really well.
It really does.
This is one of the games that's a great example of what's capable today with current technologies. And I can't pretend to understand the math or the algorithms necessary
Right.
to create a complex puzzle that can be infinitely reconfigured.
Exactly.
The 108 hexes are on 6 boards that you flip around and rotate. It's modular, but it's not that modular. It's 6 boards, 6 buildings, 1 rule each. I don't know how they do it.
It is quite astounding. I did not know that it was proprietary information.
Currently a trade secret that we're not privy to.
Trade secret, yeah. Cryptid is a great game. We love it. That's one of Sherry's favorites for sure. Mystery of the Abbey. Mystery of the Abbey is a whodunit deduction game with a heavy reliance on hand management that can be played with 3 to 6 players, ages 8 and up. Designed by Bruno Feduti and Serge Laguette and published in 1995 by Days of Wonder, Mystery of the Abbey can be played in 60 to 90 minutes. A monk has been murdered in a medieval French abbey. Players maneuver their way through the abbey, examining clues and questioning each other to find out who is the culprit. There are 24 suspect cards that come in the game. Each card has a different monk on it, and each monk has 5 different identifying characteristics. The order that they belong to: the Templars, the Franciscans, and the Benedictines. This is clearly represented by the color of the robes they are wearing, either red, brown, or black. Their title: they are either a novice, a brother, or a father. The hood of their robe: half of the monks are wearing robes that are hooded, and half are unhooded. Their facial hair: 12 monks have beards, and the other 12 are clean-shaven. Their size or girth: half the monks are thin, and the others are fat. At the beginning of the game, the cards are shuffled. 6 cards are dealt to each player, and 1 card is tucked under the game board without looking at it. The monk on that card is the murderer. These monks on the cards in your hand, and everyone else's hand of cards that you can't see, are all innocent of the crime. You can get more cards during the game, and will be swapping cards with other players throughout the game. Quoting Sherlock Holmes, "When you have excluded the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth."
Oh, so you do know what deduction means.
Yes, that is the backbone of what is happening in Mystery of the Abbey. The goal is to eliminate the monks that you know are innocent and figure out which monk committed the murder. In Mystery of the Abbey, you don't need to determine the murder weapon or the motive or anything else like that. Players get this full color sheet with each monk, their picture, name, and details printed on it, and players use this sheet to take notes and cross out monks that they know are innocent. Players move around the abbey represented on the board, and each room of the abbey provides a different action that you can do there. For example, some rooms may let you randomly take a monk card from another player, or you may get a card that will let you take an extra turn later in the game. Cards may also make it easier to move around the Abbey. Players will be questioning each other about the cards in their hands. If your pawn ends its move in a room already occupied by another player's pawn, you must ask that player a question. Examples of the types of questions include,
How many bearded monks have you got in your hand?
do you have the Father Sergio card?
How many Benedictines have you crossed out of your suspect list?
Have you eliminated Father Bruno from your list of suspects? As all players have taken a vow of honesty, all questions must be answered truthfully to the best of the player's knowledge or recollection. The question player may either make a vow of silence by putting his finger to his mouth, thus declining to answer, or answer your question, in which case he will then also get to ask you a question in return. You are then bound to answer his question.
I have strategically avoided answering these questions in the past because I've known you're going to ask me a question. You're going to find out information that I don't want to give.
Right. You just take the vow of silence.
Strategically. It's always good to get more information, especially when you get that commitment, right?
Yeah.
They're going to ask me a question and I can decide whether or not I want to answer it, having heard the question. But then in return, I get to ask them anything and they've got to answer it. I can't say something like, what was the name of the last card you picked up? Because they cannot say a specific name of a specific monk to me, but I can ask them very specific questions, and it's
Have you eliminated
powerful.
This person or that person? Yeah.
How many novice Benedictines have you eliminated? That's tremendous.
Exactly. After every fourth turn, Mass is called. The game even comes with a tiny bell that helps you keep track of the phases of each turn, and you are instructed to ring the bell to indicate the end of the round and that players must all return to the chapel for Mass.
All players return to chapel. All players return to chapel.
I mean, that's how we've house ruled it, and I don't know how you guys play.
That's awesome. At this point, players will exchange some of their cards in their hand. The first time, it's just one card passed to the person on your left. But the number of cards that you must pass increases as the game proceeds. And then an event card is drawn that will require players to reveal some more information about the cards in their hand to the other players, or they may change the rules slightly for a single turn. When you think you have enough information, you can go to one of the rooms, the chapter hall, to make a revelation. A revelation is a public announcement to all players that you have discovered one characteristic about the guilty monk. Just because an opponent has made a revelation, this doesn't necessarily mean that information is correct. All revelations are written down and verified at the end of the game once the culprit has been revealed. Each correct revelation is worth 2 points, and each false revelation loses that player 1 point.
It's important to note that revelations need to be positive. You need to say the culprit is a father,
Right.
or the culprit is bearded.
Right.
You can't say is, I know the culprit isn't a Benedictine. That's not going to fly.
Very good point. In the same room, you can also make an accusation by publicly naming the monk they suspect as the culprit. At that time, if that monk's card is in another player's hand and is therefore innocent, that player must reveal the card to prove the monk's innocence. If the accusation is false, that player will lose 2 points at the end of the game, but if no other player has the card in their hand, then that monk is guilty. This is confirmed by the card that was tucked under the board at the start of the game. Then the game ends. A correct accusation will score the player 4 victory points. However, you don't automatically win by making a correct accusation. The player with the most points from correct declarations and fewest incorrect guesses wins the game. I think Mystery of the Abbey is a great replacement for Clue. If you like Clue, you will like Mystery of the Abbey.
Yeah.
It gets rid of all of that sort of roll and move of Clue, and it provides more strategic choices and player interaction. Players are forced to get creative a little bit and think up ways to outsmart each other. You do this by asking, what questions you ask to get the clues out of other players.
I was surprised at how much hinged on the kinds of questions you could come up with.
Yeah. It is a game that I think can be a little one-sided if you're playing with someone who's really skilled or has played it a lot of times against someone who's new to it. It's not difficult to learn, and It's definitely not difficult to play or even to win. The theme is very approachable. It allows new players, to just jump right in. It doesn't take a long time to explain. Like many of these games, a game of Mystery of the Abbey can be messed up if a player at the table makes a mistake and provides an answer to a question that is incorrect, even if it was by accident.
Yeah.
This can mess the game up for everyone. So it requires some careful guidance when you're teaching it. For me, I think the biggest thing, though, is note-taking. Note-taking is extremely important in a game of Mystery of the Abbey. How well you do will often depend on how well you take notes on your sheet during the game.
Yeah, that sheet, though, is so great. Like, it's got all the 24 people, and there's a little icon to tell you, is he clean-shaven underneath that hood? I can't tell. Well, there's a little icon to tell you whether that,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's full color, which is great.
And it doesn't leave any doubt. Like there's always a way to say, okay, yeah, he is clean shaven and he has a hood and he's thin and he's from the Benedictines. It's very, very clear.
It's very clear.
Fun fact, Mystery of the Abbey was the first really big game that was published by Days of Wonder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, before that, they'd only published one other game. It was a small card game called Gang of Four. Mystery of the Abbey established Days of Wonder's brand, creating that Days of Wonder box size and shape, and got them a lot of attention as the company that found the game that got referred to at the time as the game that kills Clue.
It does have that thing where you'll have a monk in your hand and you can hide it.
Yeah.
Like Novice Basil is in my hand and he's not going anywhere. I'm not letting anybody know that he's in my hand, and I'm going to show everybody else all the other cards I can. I'll hold that one and hide that one. So maybe people will think that they were the murderer. And that's a popular Clue strategy.
Yeah.
But it translates quite well to this game.
Yeah, and it's a very common strategy in this one too. As the game goes on, you have to pass more and more cards, so it becomes harder to hold back more than maybe 2 cards.
Yeah.
Usually when the game ends and somebody correctly guesses the culprit, almost everyone else at the table was on the verge of guessing it as well. I don't think I've ever played where someone has felt that they were like completely out of the game and had no clue.
Yeah. They were right on the edge. Everybody's like 1 or 2 turns from figuring it out.
Yeah, and it's like I just had to eliminate if it was this guy or that guy, and I was going to the chapter hall to make an accusation.
Awkward Guests. Awkward Guests is a humorous, hand management, murder mystery deduction game for 1 to 8 players, ages 12 and up, that plays in about an hour. Awkward Guest was designed by Ron Gonzalo Garcia and published in 2016 by Megacorpin Games. There's been a murder. Mr. Walton was found dead in his study. You and the other investigators have been brought to Mr. Walton's mansion to find the murderer, deduce the murder weapon, and discover the motive. Was there an accomplice? It's quite possible if you're playing at the higher difficulty. Who will be the first to solve the murder of Mr. Walton? Like all good murder mysteries, Awkward Guests has 6 suitable suspects, each with 3 possible motives, and a sprawling mansion teeming with deadly weapons. The suspects are great. There's Angela Albertson and Stanley Smith and Greg Gaffney. Everybody's names are an alliteration, so you can use a single letter when making notes about a suspect. Each player is given a screen and a detailed worksheet that has a map of the mansion, a list of the suspects, and an inventory of all the deadly weapons organized by type, but also referencing the rooms where they can be found in. For example, Of the suffocating weapons, the leather strap can be found in the garage and the pillow can be found in the bedroom. You can find the rope in the shed, and the curtain cord in the library can be used to strangle somebody.
The sheet is really great, actually. It's a landscape 8.5 by 11 sheet with lots of boxes for checking off stuff and room for notes and note-taking during the game. It's great.
Yeah. Awkward Guests is primarily 243 different clue cards, each with a unique identifying number on the back and a clue, fact, rumor, or observation on the front. In a game of Awkward Guests, you carefully build a deck from an app that will tell you which clue cards need to go in to create the mystery. These clue cards could be:
Greg Gaffney asserts that Stanley Smith might have been involved in the murder motivated by the macabre bet.
The housekeeper reports that there were 2 people in the library at the time of the murder.
After examining the body, the coroner determined that poison was not used to murder Mr. Walton.
After examining the body, the coroner did not find any oily substance. So you would go to your sheet and there's a little check mark next to Stanley Smith's name about what Greg said about the bet. Greg might be lying, so that's only a rumor, whereas the housekeeper isn't a suspect and what she says is true. So you can put a number 2 in the box in the library, showing that there were only 2 people in the library at the time of the murder. You go down to the poison section and eliminate the antifreeze and the rat poison and the pesticides and the poisonous plant from being possible weapons. The no oily substance means that he wasn't killed with the wrench or the frying pan. You can scratch those off too. Each player starts with a small hand of these cards. They're valued 1, 2, or 3, depending on how useful the information on the card is. Like clue points. The rumor about what Greg said would be a 1, whereas the forensic information about the firearms would be a 3. Each round, each player is given a turn to ask the other players for cards with information about a place and about a suspect. So you might ask, does anybody have any information about Claudette or the kitchen? Or does anybody have any clues pertaining to Angela or the billiard room? Players will then look through their hands and find cards that pertain to Angela or the billiard room. Of these cards, they can select as little or as many as they want and place them face down, total up the value of the cards, and put a token on top, indicating how many clue points are in the pile. The active player can trade with as many players at the table as they want, swapping points for points. So 1 3-point card can be traded for 3 1-point cards. This is how the information is shared.
Right.
You do a round of this, everyone discards down to 3, draws back up to 6. At the end of each round, everyone is given a chance to accuse a suspect, and if you're ready, you can guess. If you're correct, you win the game, and if you're not, you are eliminated from the game. Play continues like this until someone has discovered the culprit.
Cool.
Awkward Guests has that familiar thing that we've seen in other deduction games where players are trying to keep information from other players while simultaneously trying to solve the mystery. I'm not sure if it works as well in this game. It's difficult to know which cards will be useful for other players.
Right.
One of the clues might be, the service staff reports that none of the guests entered the vestibule from the trophy room or vice versa. This clue scores a 1, but it might be all you need to solve the mystery. If you needed to eliminate the machete as a possible weapon, as it's stored in the trophy room, and you had previously deduced that the murderer was in the library. It's not just eliminating all the suspects or weapons or motives. The geography and location of the people and the weapons in the rooms at the time of the murder will be crucial in solving it before anybody else.
What I think is really unique about Awkward Guests, or at least it's unique for me, I've not seen it in any other game, is the idea that the clues, they have points, and you can pile up a bunch of them and trade them around that way. Like they're actually
currency.
Yeah, they're a currency in this game in some ways. And I like that. I think that's really a a neat feature to this game.
The starting hands are supposed to be random, but we've house ruled that everybody gets a 3, everybody gets a 2, and then the rest of the starting hands are 1s in order to mitigate any quirky randomness that might come up.
Right. That's probably a pretty good house rule.
What I like about Awkward Guess is how it uses the geography of the mansion as a deduction mechanism. If there were 2 people in the library at the time of the murder and nobody went through the vestibule, well, then the murderer must have gone a different way. And that will often eliminate some weapons and some suspects from being considered because there was no access, there was no path to get to the body.
The locations and how you can get from one spot to another really plays a big role. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. You did all the setup when we played this, and I remember it takes some time.
Yeah, it's like Marvel Legendary times 10.
Times 10, that's a lot.
Because it's 248 unique cards, and once you've built your deck and everybody's played with them, you want to put them back properly. And so would you put them back in order again to make setup for the next game easier? It's kind of a pain, unfortunately.
Like the game Mystery of the Abbey, there's a notepad, and that plays a big role in Awkward Guests. Except
it's so much better. And no offense to Mystery of the Abbey, but there's a little map of the mansion, and each suspect has check marks beside it for each of the motives and stuff and what people may have said about them. No, it's very robust.
Yeah.
And the clue cards will tell you how to notate the information. If they say Angela was seen in the trophy room, then you put a little A in the trophy room. It shows you on the card where to write on your sheet to remember that information. And it quickly starts to come together.
Yeah, the sheets play a big role. And like comparing the 2 games, they do very different things, right?
They do very different things. That's true.
In Mystery in the Abbey, you just have to find the culprit. In this one, you have to find a lot more. And, like you said, geography is a factor, and different weapons and motives and all that stuff can all be written down on that notepad. It's really a good notepad.
Yeah. And you get a nice big screen to hide everything behind so that people can't see.
Right.
So satisfying.
Code 777. Originally released in 1985, Code 777 was published by Chieftain Products, but got a renewed life when it was published by Stronghold Games in 2010. Code 777 is a deduction game about guessing numbers for 2 to 5 players ages 10 and up that takes about an hour to play. Thematically, there isn't much or any theme here. I like to tell players that we're code breakers trying to figure out what part of the code represented by the sets of numbers is in front of us. Not a lot of theme here, but still fun.
It's true. It's a very mathy game.
Yeah. Each player receives a rack to keep 3 tiles from a pool of 28 in total. The tiles have different numbers from 1 to 7 in 7 different colors. Your player rack is turned away from you so everyone can see everyone else's tiles, but not their own. You can never look at your own tiles. Each turn, players draw a card, read it aloud, and truthfully answer the question on it. Questions might include,
do you see more yellow 7s or more blue 7s?
On how many racks is the sum of the number 18 or more?
On how many racks do you see only even or uneven numbers?
Players then look at everyone else's tiles and use the information provided by the player's answer to that question to surmise some information about their own tiles. When you are sure which tiles you have in front of you, you can take a guess. You only have to announce which numbers are on the 3 tiles in front of you, and you don't have to correctly guess their color. If you guess all 3 of your tiles correctly, you get a point and start again with 3 new tiles. But if you guess incorrectly, you discard your tiles and start over with 3 new unseen tiles. The winner is the first player to get 3 points, i.e. correctly guess all 3 of their tiles 3 times.
Okay.
So there seems to be a theme with deduction games. Code 77 comes with a little player sheet that shows you how many tiles there are of each number and each color, and the notepad that shows this as well. Players are encouraged to cross off numbers that are definitely not on their own rack because they're on the other player's racks, or because of the information provided by players answering questions in-game.
Yeah.
It's one that is a bit of a brain burner. It always feels like I'm using a lot of brain power when I play this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite difficult too, I would say. The fact that many of the numbers have different colors and some different numbers share the same color, that really throws the answers to some of those questions for a loop.
It's really hard to notate the answers too. The sheet provided gives you all the available tiles that you're going to have in front of you, but
yeah,
the kinds of questions we're asking, the information that we're getting, it's hard to put it on the paper to remember what the answers were.
Yeah.
3 turns later.
Yeah. Yeah, we use sort of a home brew sheet that is much larger so that you can make much larger notes on it.
Nice. Yeah.
It's a tough game, and I often feel kind of tired after we've played it like a couple times in a night. It's like, okay, I think I'm done. We need something really light to end the night now, because I've been frowning for 45 minutes. Code 77 can be pretty punishing for players that guess incorrectly. Even if you just get 2 of your 3 numbers correct, you still score 0 points. And you have to literally start all over from scratch with 3 new numbers and no information about what they are now. So all the information you gathered on your previous 3 numbers is irrelevant.
You start over. It's harsh.
When all the tiles have been used, you reshuffle the discarded tiles and start over. That's the hard part. You basically have to restart your notes all over. We figured out that you should basically start out with a new note sheet every time that the tiles are shuffled.
Right.
Just start all over.
Yeah, it changes the variables too much.
Yeah, the tiles that you've been eliminating are now added into the pool of what could be picked. Some of the questions in the game provide you with very little to no information, and that can be frustrating for some players. Mm-hmm. But what's very little to no information for Matt might be tons of information for Chris. Right. And the problem becomes that you might get 2 or 3 of those cards in a row, and I might be getting good information. So it can be frustrating for some players. The Stronghold edition added in symbols to the numbers and colors, making it colorblind friendly.
Nice.
Much like Letter Jam, if you are playing with less than 4 players, tiles are placed on 4 racks so that players have some added information. The non-player racks are replaced every time there is a correct solution. And because of this, I think it's probably best with 4 players, but it still works pretty good at 2 or 3.
Okay.
Fun fact, besides Code 77, Alex Randolph also designed Twixt, Ricochet Robots, Enchanted Forest, and Incognito.
We're going to get back to the show after a brief message. This next ad is for Chris's own company, Geeky Goodies. If you'd like to hear what an ad for your game, product, or website might sound like, drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. When we escape into board games, we're always wearing our Geeky Goodies t-shirts.
They are great conversation starters for gamers and non-gamers.
But did you know that they also sell masks, socks, hoodies, game room posters, mugs, and so much more?
All things board games.
All things geeky.
Visit geekygoodies.com and use coupon code ESCAPE for a 10% discount off your purchase.
The Search for Planet X. The Search for Planet X is an action point, time track, astronomy deduction game designed by Matthew O'Malley and Ben Rossett and published by Foxtrot Games in 2020. The Search for Planet X is for 1 to 4 players, is recommended for ages 13 and up, and plays in about an hour. In The Search for Planet X, players are astronomers, each with a powerful telescope aimed at the stars. Real astronomers often can't see actual planets in far-off galaxies, but rather deduce their location by the behavior of the celestial objects they can see. And in The Search for Planet X, it's very much the same, in that the planet X won't be visible in the night sky. You need to determine its location from the behavior of the neighboring celestial objects. On a player's turn, they scan the night sky. The board is the Earth, in the center with 12 or 18 sectors of space, depending on the difficulty level, around the outside. Each turn, the Earth's rotation reveals different sectors of space. The night sky shifts around the board, limiting the sectors you're able to scan.
The board is beautiful too. I feel like it's genius the way it was created. Like it just looks like you're looking up into the night sky. And I love how you're seeing the different sectors as the board rotates a little bit. It's beautiful.
Yeah. When you scan the night sky, you choose what celestial object to scan for and how many sectors of space to scan. This is a clever mechanism that includes a time track. The more specific and detailed your scan is, the more time it will take on the time track.
I love a good time track game.
I put this in here just for you, Chris.
Yeah, it is my favorite board game mechanism. I love time track, and this is another example of it done very, very well.
Yeah. You're looking for a gas cloud and comets and asteroids and dwarf planets in addition to Planet X. Each sector can only have one celestial body, and each celestial body follows a set of logic rules. Comets can only be in prime sectors, as in 2, 3, 5, 7, 11.
Or 13 and 17 in the expert mode.
Gas clouds are adjacent to a truly empty sector of space.
And asteroids are adjacent to at least one other asteroid, so they are found in pairs or groups of 4.
Planet X will always appear as an empty sector of space. The scanning is done with an app. Super simple. Everyone punches in the same code, so we're all searching the same sky. The time track mechanism is really cool. If you're clever, you can time your scans so that you can have 2 turns in a row. Like most games with time track, the player at the end goes first. But if you take a turn that spends only a little time, you can still be the last on the track. Research, for example, is a scanning option that will give you a new logic code for a celestial object, like the dwarf planet is directly opposite the asteroid. That tiny nugget might be useful. It might not be, not yet, but it only costs 1 time, whereas all other actions take 3 to 5 time. Throughout the game, players will trigger the theory phase. This is where players will have an opportunity to place tokens face down on the board, if they've narrowed down where the dwarf planet is, or they've deduced the location of a comet. They place the matching token in their player color face down on the board in the corresponding sector. After we've gone around the board, those tokens start to get flipped over, and we test to see if the results are correct. Players get points for each correct answer and more points for answering first.
So it's not just a race to find Planet X. There's other opportunities that you can get to collect points.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, after Planet X has been found, you can still have one more chance to find it. I mean, more than one player can find Planet X.
Right. So you found Planet X. I've got one more turn to use my information so that I can also find it and get more points and maybe win. Because the app contains the puzzle, the player's interaction doesn't have any players hiding or hoarding information. Right.
Lots of deduction games have a fair amount of luck due to some guesses being more powerful or more useful than others. If you happen to make the correct guess on your first guess, you're going to come out ahead of the other players. The search for Planet X mitigates this quite a bit by more evenly distributing the information. You really need to piece together nearly the entire sky before you can answer the Planet X question.
That's really true, actually. I never thought of that. That's essentially what you're doing is you're getting everything.
You're just mapping the whole thing, exactly.
Yeah. When you play it, you feel like you're in this race to see who can figure out the logic behind it all as fast as possible.
Yeah. There's so many options in which, because you can do a big scan. You can scan like 5 sectors and it only costs 3 time. Or you can scan 1 sector and it costs 4 time. And so these kinds of choices are really important because you can go shoot way ahead, and then your opponents are going to get more guesses and more information.
I love the time track.
It's fairly thinky, but it plays quickly. And if you want an even more robust, longer challenge, there's the advanced game.
Foxtrot Games, they do an excellent job. I like so many of their games. They're beautiful games. They're well thought out. They work really, really well. And like, it's gotten to the point now when Foxtrot releases a new game, I get excited. Like, I really want to see what it's about and what they're doing.
Nice. Yeah.
MicroMacro Crime City. MicroMacro Crime City is a cooperative deduction game about solving a crime for 1 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, that takes about 30 minutes to play. MicroMacro was designed by Johan Siech and was published by Edition Spielweis in 2020. A crime has taken place somewhere in the city. Players have to work together to investigate the crime scene and the events leading up to the crime to solve it. MicroMacro Crime City comes with 16 cases to solve. These are different scenarios that all use the same giant map. The map is the board for this game and has an enormous picture drawn on it in black and white. Besides the streets and buildings displayed on the map, there are thousands of tiny creatures populating the city and going about their day.
This thing is huge.
It is.
It's like a big giant fold, like it's like a map.
Yeah.
You have to unfold it, and it covers the entire table. What is it?
It's 29.5 by 43 inches.
What is that? 75 by 109 centimeters. That's huge.
It's enormous. As you look at the map in MicroMacro, you'll notice that it exists in a bunch of different times, all in the same picture. So you will see the same people in different parts of the city experiencing things at different times. You might see the guy walking out of the pizza joint with a pizza, and then he walks by the park and he's dropped his hat, that sort of thing.
Right. The shorthand everyone uses to describe this game is the black and white Where's Waldo.
Yes.
But the crucial thing that is very different that separates it is this time paradox thing that's happening where the same characters are in multiple places and you can see their progression, and you often have to trace the progression. Well, what did they do before they came to the butcher shop, or right? And then you're going backwards and finding out where did they come from and where did they pick up that stolen car or whatever it is.
This is where the theme really comes to life in this game, because you're literally retracing the steps of the killer or the criminal, and seeing what they did just before the murder or just before they got in the car or something like that.
It feels like you're scrubbing security footage of the all-seeing eye all over the city.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at this street corner. But it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
But for some reason, somehow it feels like you're traveling in time as well as geographically.
True. Very true. You start each scenario with a card that will prompt you to find a specific person or location. And as the story progresses, you will get more clues, providing more information about the person you were looking for. The clues might include a building or a general location, like look for a man wearing a top hat in front of the pub in the east end of the city. Players examine the details of the map, often using the included magnifying glass until they find the initial crime scene, then work backwards, looking for the same person or other details to see what happened before the crime took place. In this example, you might see a person getting into a car, and then a little further along, the person might be driving the car. And further along, maybe they get out of the car and are in a restaurant or outside on a patio.
Yeah.
Clue cards might prompt you with questions like,
who committed the murder?
Why did they do it?
What was the murder weapon?
Those types of questions. The cards in the game can be used any way that you want, as prompts to keep you moving further along in the story, as a way to see how well you are doing, to help if you get stuck, and as a way to check your answer to the puzzle at the end of the game. There's no scoring in the game. You either solve it correctly or you don't.
Yeah, it's purely cooperative. Everyone around the table has that shame meter. I mean, how much did we really screw that up or whatever?
Yeah.
We all know internally if the mystery was solved.
I like that, the shame meter. Yeah, it's true. We didn't do very good in this one. And it's up to you as the player or as the team of players to, talk about it and talk about how you decide when you think you have enough information to move on to the next card in this scenario, or when you said, you know what, we've solved the case. Mm-hmm. Let's read the last card to see if we've got it right. It's totally up to you. It's self-directed in that way.
Yeah, it allows the game to have a nice pace.
Yeah. This game definitely could have made our unique mechanisms episode, as its basic mechanism is using your eyes. There are no pawns, there's no dice, and apparently you can even play the game by just reading the first clue card in the scenario and trying to work out the details of the case with no further information.
Wow.
It's just, look at the map. That's the mechanism. Use your eyes.
Yeah, it's so interesting how they've done that. And you're like, how has this not been a game before?
Yeah. To me, it's such a fresh new idea. It feels like something that you've not seen before anywhere except in the Where's Waldo books that you talked about.
Yeah.
There is a huge, huge amount of detail in the enormous image on the map. It just feels like there's a whole world in there, and we are combing through, well, look at that guy's hat, and oh, he doesn't have a bag, and oh, where's those kids? Why did they just disappear all of a sudden? Are they part of this? I don't know. As a deduction game, it feels very, very unique and creative. Very, very interesting game. MicroMacro Crime City was on quite a few people's list for Game of the Year when it was released, and it won the 2021 Spiel des Jahres Award.
The Spiel des Jahres is an award for board and card games recognizing excellence in game design. The phrase translates to Game of the Year and is the ultimate accomplishment in the world of tabletop gaming. The Spiel des Jahres nomination can dramatically increase the typical sales of a game.
MicroMacro Crime City says that it is for 1 to 4 players, but there's no real reason why you can't play it with more than that. It's really more of a guideline, I would say,
sure,
because of how many people can actually comfortably fit around this giant map where you're crowded together looking for these tiny clues.
It is a very big map, but those clues are pretty tiny. So I would say, 4 might be a reasonable limit.
Yeah, I think it's probably best with 3 or less.
Yeah.
Because of how you need to crowd around it. But I've heard of people pinning it to the wall so that everyone can get a better view and more people can play, that kind of thing. You might need multiple copies of the little magnifying glass.
Yeah.
The game only comes with the one. It is definitely very small, very tiny detail. And the idea of using a magnifying glass it's needed in a lot of cases.
Agreed.
It's a game that you can really only play each scenario one time through. After that, you'll know the details and the solution for the scenario. So it's a one-time play.
Yeah.
I'm not one that plays a lot of games solo.
Sure.
But I really think this would be one that I would try. I think it'd be a lot of fun to play it solo.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I may pick them up and just try it solo by myself. That's MicroMacro Crime City.
Alchemists. Alchemists is a worker placement, constrained bidding, open drafting, potion brewing fantasy deduction game for 2 to 4 players ages 13 and up. Published in 2004, Alchemists was designed by Matthias Kotri and published by Czech Games Edition. The arcane secrets of potion making are a combination of art and science. Mandrake root, scorpion tail, raven's feather, or warty toad are just some of your foraged ingredients. Bubbling cauldron, a detailed notepad, and an eager yet skittish pupil at your side. Healing, speed, and wisdom, or poison, paralysis, and insanity. Which ingredients make which potion? To find out, you'll need to do some testing. To do some testing, you'll need some ingredients.
And a test subject.
And for those, you'll need some money.
Where can you get some money?
Well, you could sell a potion.
But how?
Exactly. Alchemists is a worker placement game that has 5 different actions you can place your workers at in the first round. In the second to 5th rounds, there are 3 more added, and in the last round, things change again when the Great Alchemists exhibition is held. There is a Forge for Ingredients action space where you collect your potion ingredients like scorpion tails and fiddleheads.
Those cards are gorgeous. Like, all the art is beautiful. What are they? 8 different ingredients in the game?
Yeah.
And the cards are amazing. They're just fantastic.
They're these little mini ones, but they're so vibrant.
Yeah, they're great.
And there's a testing location where you combine these ingredients to make a potion. But in order to find out what potion you've made, someone has to drink it. This is where the student comes in.
Uh-oh.
He's happy to drink potions for you until he receives a bad one. And then at that point, it will cost each player $1 to test a potion on a student. The alternative is that you can drink it yourself. This action is always free, but if you drink a bad potion, you could end up paralyzed or in the hospital, or even lose reputation because you went a little crazy. Money is very important in this game, but we're not in it for the riches. Alchemists strive to be the most respected in their field. The reputation track will decide who wins this game, and reputation can go up and down depending on several factors, but mostly hinges on the publishing of correct theories.
Yeah.
In order to learn which ingredients make which potions, we must first understand alchemicals. Each of the 8 possible potion ingredients are associated with one alchemical. Each alchemical has a red, green, and blue aspect, and each aspect can be positive or negative. When you combine 2 alchemicals, the similar aspects of each will combine. So a red plus on one and a red plus on the other will create a healing potion, where a green minus on one and a green minus on another will create a paralysis potion. So using this logic and a very handy pad of paper provided by the game, you can slowly figure out which alchemicals belong to which ingredients. For if I used a chicken foot to create a healing potion, I know that the chicken foot cannot contain a red minus alchemical, as it has to be a red positive. So I can scratch off all the alchemicals under the chicken foot that have a red minus.
This is a complex game to explain and teach.
Yeah.
And it's a complex game to play.
It is. It is the heaviest game that I own. It's a worker placement game. It has all the trappings of a classic Euro, but in the core is a frickin' Sudoku. It's just like gonna melt in your mind.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's good.
This scanning and testing the puzzle is an app. The scanner is the camera on your phone, and you put your 2 ingredients in your player screen just above your cauldron and hold up your phone so that it can see those ingredients, and then you get a button to confirm, and then it will combine those ingredients and tell you what you've made. You could have another player perform this action for you instead, but I don't know why you would this side of a power outage. The best thing about these games is that no one has to be the mastermind.
Yeah, the app is neat. It works well with this game.
It's smooth, right? It doesn't, it's really smooth. It works really well. It's got some nice sounds, but it doesn't have some annoying music.
Yeah.
It's aesthetically fits.
I've read online that some people don't like apps in games, and I've read, if it has an app, I don't consider it a tabletop game, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, it just feels like the app is really just taking that role of the dungeon master or the master of the game who wouldn't get to play.
Yeah.
It's just taking that role and answering a couple questions for you throughout the game.
Yeah.
I think it works really well.
Yeah, well, good news to those players is there's pieces in the box to help them with their analog solution. There is a location where you can sell potions to a traveler. Rounds 2 through 6, a traveler comes to town requesting 3 different potions. If you know how to make one of those potions, or something close to it, you can try to sell it to them for some easy money. I always find this game so tight on money and resources and actions that you're often at this stage without 100% assurances that you're going to make the correct potion.
Right.
It's almost like a press your luck or hedge your bets kind of thing.
Yeah.
You obviously want to make the most money, but there's just not enough time to do everything.
And you got your fingers crossed.
Money and resources are very tight in this game, and you're going to need resources to make potions. And you're going to need money to pay students, to publish theories, and to buy artifacts. There will be 9 different artifacts brought out throughout the game, and these artifacts change from game to game. They will offer victory points or some sort of boost, like an upgraded cauldron or the ability to forge for more ingredients. Publishing and debunking theories are 2 more spots on the board to place your workers. Publishing theories will cost you $1, but earn you reputation. Depending on the skill level you've chosen to play at, you'll be required to have published theories throughout the game or lose reputation. This is where Alchemists differs greatly from a lot of other deduction games. When publishing theories, you can lie, guess, or hedge your bets. Alchemicals have 3 aspects: red, blue, and green. Quite often you can narrow down 1 or 2, but if you haven't narrowed down all 3, you can still publish an incomplete theory.
Cool.
It won't earn you endgame points, but it will earn you reputation during the game, and because the theories are public, you can influence or confuse other alchemists at the table.
Alchemist is a unique kind of game in some ways, isn't it?
It's treating deduction as a mechanism.
Yeah.
As a piece of the game, as opposed to the whole thing. There is drafting in this game. There is auctions in this game. There is bluffing. Because you're prompted to constantly publish theories, you're putting information out on the board. It's public for everybody to see. Other players are going to be tempted to look at that and see what you've done. And you can't be certain if what they've published is correct or not, but you naturally are going to use that to compare it against your own work and make sure that the math you've done and the deduction you've done is in line with what theories they're publishing. It can be quite nerve-wracking when you see somebody publish something on the table that completely contradicts everything that you've built up so far.
Yeah.
And then you realize you're not playing a deduction game, end quote. It's just part of it. There's all these other layers now.
Yeah, it's got a lot of layers for sure. Yeah, I would say this is probably top 5 or 10 most complicated, complex games I've ever played. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I would say it's not for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, when I say it's the heaviest game, I'm going by the BGG ranking, which is an arbitrary number, but it is pretty high. It's like a 3.9 or something.
Yeah, it's definitely complex. There's a lot of balls that you have to juggle in this game. A lot of things you have to pay attention to, a lot of decisions you have to make, a lot of different ways that you can play the game strategically and respond to different things that your opponents are doing and what comes up in the app and that sort of thing.
Yeah, which brings me back to the game again and again, because there's so much there to explore. It works really well at 2 players. I've got a buddy who really likes deduction games, and he and I can play this, just the 2 of us, and it scales very well. It has that first player isn't passed back and forth. You do take turns being the first player, but when you're first player, you take your potion and you select your wake-up order. And this is a very familiar mechanism we've seen in a lot of Euro games, primarily in Viticulture, the Tuscany expansion, where you pick your wake-up order.
Right.
So if you're the first player, you just go, oh, I'm going to go in spot number 3, and that gets me a little bonus, right? I get a little card or whatever. I get some extra resources or whatever. And then the next player comes in behind you and says, oh, you're in spot 3. I'm going to go in spot 2. And now I'm going first.
Right, and I get the prime pick of what I want.
And we all know in worker placement games, first player is everything.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage in most.
It is a huge advantage, and there's a lot of that in this game. Is trying to maintain that advantage. Again, there's a lot.
And the theme is fun. It's a great game in terms of thematically. Like, you really feel like you are mixing these things and the potions together and the ingredients together and creating these potions. And I love that part of the game. It's a lot of fun.
Have you played any of the board games that we've talked about today? What's your favorite deduction game? Drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Escape Into Board Games podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Escape Into Board Games.
This episode is produced by Matt McKenzie and Chris Cormier. Production assistance by Sherry Cormier. Music by John Yasut and Daniel Carlton. See you at the next Escape.